your time to meet with us. Did you want to, I put you on the spot. Did you want to kind of say a few words introducing yourself?
Since you put me on the spot, I guess I have to. My name's Jeffrey Bond. I'm a sergeant with the Pearland Police Department. I've been there for almost 13 years. Spent 6 years on night shift patrol. 6 years after that, I was in CID focusing on financial crimes, which got me involved with the skimmers, fuel theft. And for the last past year, I've been supervising on night shifts.
Awesome. Thank you, sir. Again, thank you for meeting with us. We need to approve the minutes from the last meeting. Delia, will you do a roll call on approval of those, please? Actually, I guess I need a motion for someone to
Yes, motion and a
approve the
second.
minutes.
I move that we approve the minutes.
I'll second it.
Great. Thanks, gentlemen.
I'm sorry, who's second?
Nathan Winkleman.
Oh, thank you. Now I'll do the roll call vote. Keisha Esqueda,
Approve.
Terry Maxey, do you approve of the minutes as presented, Mr. Maxey? You're muted, sir. Mr. Maxey, can you hear me?
Yes, I apologize for that. Yes, I approve of them, and I got to learn how to turn my mute off. Sorry.
Okay. Terry Hera,
I approve.
Carlos Garza,
I approve.
Zeth Stevens,
I approve.
Adam Thompson,
Approved.
and presiding officer Jason Harris.
Approved.
Motion passes.
Thank you. With respect to public comment, we did not receive any specific to this meeting. So that means we'll move on to the staff reports. First up is the licensing division, Laura Hernandez.
Good morning, board members. My name is Laura Hernandez. I'm the license manager of the tools team, which handles the processing of applications and renewals for the fuel metering and quality program. My report today contains statistics for fiscal year 2022 and then the first 2 quarters of fiscal year 2023. Those were the only ones available at that time. Most numbers are the same. You will notice farther down under the devices that we now have online percentage of online renewals that we're able to report. That's one of the newer things, because now that the devices are able to renew those invoices online, there's that percentage. And so we're hoping that that percentage will greatly increase as it becomes available and more companies start to renew online. So there is actually some percentage there to report for this report for this board meeting. And then as far as our current projects, we're still monitoring the online system to make sure that those companies are still able to go online and that the certificates are being sent out, and handle any issues that may arise from anyone using that on new online system. And I'm happy to answer any questions if anybody has any for me today.
No questions? Appreciate it, Mr.
Thank
Hernandez.
you.
Next up is the customer service division, Jacqueline Rush.
Hi, good morning, Presiding Officer Harris and advisory board members. My name is Jacqueline Rush. I am a manager in the customer service division, and I'm standing in for this program today. Our division was asked to share our call statistics today. Statistics were also shared at the last advisory board meeting on March 1st, so these numbers will look very similar to what you've already seen, with the addition of February and March numbers. Please note that all the emails from customers for this program go straight to the licensing team to avoid any delays in processing. Calls that our division receives for our customers are mainly on things like application and renewal instructions, clarification on procedures, clarification on laws and rules, status inquiries on applications, renewals, or sticker orders, filing a complaint, technical questions that we may route to a specialist if necessary. We see the calls continue to decrease in this program as different phases of improvements are made, such as the online portal that Laura Hernandez mentioned that customers may use for invoices to be paid online by credit card, which went live on January of 2023. And I'll be happy to answer any questions if I can.
This is Keisha Esqueda. I personally, through my company, sent 2 emails in March, maybe even one in April, one in March, but typically I get a response right away. And I never received a response for either of those emails. So I was wondering if there was something wrong with the system. If you guys had noticed like them just dropping off completely.
Yeah, so our division doesn't receive emails for your program, but I bet that if you send your contact information in the email that you sent it from to Delia or different folks on the advisory board team, that we can do some research, with the licensing division and see if we can find out what happened. Mhm.
Okay. So the emails that are listed in your graph here,
Yeah,
those go through another group?
yes, we have
Okay.
some program. Yeah, this is a general template for our advisory board meetings. So we have some programs where we work on emails. Then we have some programs where they go directly to the licensing division. That minimal number is just because we have such a vast amount of people contacting us that sometimes we'll receive if fuels related questions through another portal. And in which case we will either answer it or send it over to the licensing team for review, depending on the question.
Mary Winston here. So it's a collaborative effort. Jacqueline is presenting this evidence. So you see the number of emails and looks like you may have been in that number, but we have Laura here, Laura Hernandez, who just spoke for the licensing division, and I'll bet she can do just a little research on that. Laura, I don't want to speak for you, but I'm sure you can catch that.
Sure. Well,
So
sorry.
I just want to be clear that it wasn't like I sent an email directly to an email address. It was through the online system.
Yes.
And typically, I think you get a response that gives you a number, but I never even got those responses. So it made me think something was going on.
Let us check that out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, Terry Maxey here. Just a quick question. Is it normal that for like other state agencies or maybe other programs that you get 100 times more calls than you do emails? It's almost like you're missing some email statistics or something's out of balance. When I do customer support for a computer or something, email is really probably more efficient than calls. So that seems kind of out of proportion to me.
So, Mr. Maxey, I'm going to start the response for this. The reason we'll be able to catch Mrs. Esqueda's email is because it's on the server. We do have it. In different programs, these numbers could be completely flipped. It just depends on the program. Jessica is messaging me in the background saying at the previous agency, you also, with this program, got more calls than emails. So it just must be the nature of the beast, so to speak. But it just depends on the program. We'll get more calls, we'll get more emails. Maybe because it's the way that it was done before, it's the way that it's continued to be done is calls versus emails. But I can pretty much assure you that this is accurate for this program. But it could be totally the opposite for one of our other programs, and I'm sure it is.
And Mary, I'd like to just add a little bit to that. You're right on. And so just like as Jacqueline was explaining, is that her group gets some emails, but that web contact where you go online and you go to the TDLR website and you send an email through that web contact portal, those come directly to, for some programs, directly to that team that handles those emails. For the fuel metering quality program, those emails do come directly to my team. And so those emails, those web contacts, or even direct emails are not part of the customer service statistics. Unfortunately, because we get so many web contacts for 10 different programs that we handle for my team, there's not a way for us to capture the exact number of emails that are just for the fuel meter and quality other than manually counting them. And so because there's so many, and so those emails, now we can definitely work on that and try to get you some better statistics for the actual email count or web contact inquiries that come in. And we can definitely follow up on that and see if we can get a better number for you.
Great. So just to summarize, the statistics here listed for emails are only ones that came directly to customer service and then were passed on. Okay, so it's a little bit misleading. Understood. How strongly do the board members feel about having staff spend the extra time trying to square up these numbers? Just out of curiosity, is that something we want to?
And
Let
Mr.
them do?
Harris,
Yeah.
this would be an addition for the licensing division. If you all want it, that's, we can request it and they will do it.
And that's what I'm getting at. I mean,
Okay.
I want to kind of address the need versus the amount of time it's going to take staff to kind of put that together as something that's not routine for them. But if it's something that's valuable, then let's do it.
Yeah, Jason, Terry Maxey, I'm not deeply invested in it. I just look at a statistic and it seems wrong.
Sure. Yeah.
And
Well,
of course, we know it's right. I mean, I believe you. I don't disbelieve you, but usually when a statistic is so far out of balance, either something's broken or it was miscounted. In other words, the link to the email is buried somewhere where it shouldn't be, and it's not easy or something like that. So I'm not deeply invested in it, Jason. I just, when I look at a number that just don't look right, I'm just saying, doesn't look right. We can ignore it if we want to. I'll leave that up to y'all, but it doesn't look right to me.
And
well,
this is
it isn't right, but we know why
this is,
now.
Jacqueline Rush from the Customer Service Division. I should give a little bit of context that there was a time when customer service didn't answer all questions for all programs. What we found, and this was about a year and a half ago, is that some of the emails that we received, we were really just forwarding them to certain divisions depending on the program. So that change was made about a year and a half ago so that it would relieve the bottleneck so that the customer could get service quicker through the licensing program. And so, yeah, definitely we'll accept the feedback on clarification needed on the report, but hopefully that context helps.
So as a board, I think we might value staff kind of looking at it just to see what it would take to maybe provide those numbers, but not delving in too deeply. Is that the consensus from the team here?
This is Keisha Esqueda. I think that's fair. And, maybe even just a little disclaimer on your chart. Like in my mental model is when I reach out to someone at TDLR, it's all the same place, like it's just an inquiry, but this difference is between customer service and licensing, I think is what would tell the full story.
Great. Appreciate it, Jacqueline. Tony Reed, update on enforcement division. Tony, I think you're muted, sir.
Sorry about that.
No worries.
Good morning. I'm Anthony Reed. I'm a prosecutor in the enforcement division. I have the enforcement report. I'm not going to go over all the statistics you've been given, especially since your last meeting was March. I will point out the average time to close an FMQ case is around 30 days less than the average of the other programs, so we're doing pretty well there. We've also provided a couple representative case summaries. And finally, we note that Sedona Food Mart's stop sale has been rescinded We tested their fuel again, and it now meets specifications. Happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions for Mr. Reed? Are there any specific statistics that any of the members would want to see based on your review of the documentation provided before the meeting? We kind of glossed through them pretty quickly here, but anything specific anyone wants to review? Okay. Thanks, Tony.
Thank you.
Moving on to the Regulatory Program Management Division, Mr. Foskey.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Tim Foskey. I'm the supervisor over the FMQ team. And this morning I'll be giving the Regulatory Program Management staff report. The statistics for fiscal year 2023 from September 1 to 2022 through March 31st, 2023 are listed there for you in the report, along with the fiscal year 2022 statistics. And getting into current projects, FMQ staff have been working with the FCIC on training throughout the state regarding skimmers and our role here as a department when it comes to skimmer detection and skimmer reporting. In April, we assisted in 2 trainings, one in Corpus Christi on April the 6th. Program specialist Juan Zarate provided a presentation to the group, and on April the 26th in Georgetown, program specialist Billy Horde was also given a presentation during the FCIC training to help educate law enforcement about TDLR and the department's role when it comes to skimmers. We also had a TDLR training in March at Source University, in Arlington, where staff had the opportunity to see a replica of an underground storage tank. Staff were able to get some hands-on training and a good look at what the whole underground storage system looks like. We had folks from our enforcement division, including management, prosecutors, investigators, and even the FCIC joined us as well. Overall, it was an excellent training for everyone, and we have already planning a follow-up for next year. FMQ staff continue to work closely with our third-party lab Tribalogic, reviewing ASTM standards and specifications, expanding our knowledge to better understand the testing procedures and specifications for fuel samples pulled here in the state. FMQ staff continue to work with TDLR Enforcement Division to help standardize fuel quality testing by developing a step-by-step fuel quality guidance doc for collecting samples, along with a safety guidance doc for on-site inspections at these locations. Outreach. Recently, program specialist Richard Bolton was asked to provide some training on DPR reporting in the Houston area in April to one of our licensed service companies. Richard outlined the requirements when conducting, entering, and reporting DPRs to TDLR, along with answering questions regarding skimmers. So please, if anyone needs assistance or training on reporting DPRs, skimmers, or anything else that's within our wheelhouse, please feel free to contact us using the FMQ Tech Info email inbox, and we'll help you out however we can. The email address is fmqtechinfo@tdr.texas.gov. And that's all I have for today. This concludes my report. Does anybody have any questions?
Terry Maxey, Tim, is it possible to scroll back up to the skimmer statistics? Just because you were just going so fast there, I couldn't quite catch
sorry about that.
just the overall, how many and all that kind of business.
So that's fiscal year. That's the last fiscal year, right? Terry, are you more concerned with now? Okay, there you go.
Jason, I think what I just wanted to be a little bit informed about was, skimmers are a big part of our new rulemaking, as we kind of refine how those things are done. And I kind of just want to generally know how many of them are out there being found. Does that trend up, down? What does that sort of look like? And I guess we kind of blazed through these. I didn't have time to really read them or get sort of a sense of them.
Well, and I had a similar comment. I might like to see something displayed more as a trend information on that metric myself, especially with, the statute, since it's been in place, and also the rules we're discussing to promulgate from the agency. It'd be kind of interesting to see if there's been any impact over time for those skimmers. Is that something that's possible, Mr. Fasky?
Sure, yeah, we can definitely, work on that and try to get you some better statistics showing trends of. I will say that it seems like we've definitely seen a lot more of the merchants reporting it to us, which is great. Just because we had trouble in the past of getting them to report to us. So we've definitely been doing some outreach out there. Obviously we can go to these locations and explaining to them that they are required to report to us. So that's definitely. You can see that's kind of gone up, and so I believe you can note that from even like last year, all of last year's, what was it, 266, and we're already at 136. So seems like we're on the, we're moving up, I would say, on receiving those reports, which is good.
Jason, Terry Maxey again. Is there some use to trying to characterize where the skimmers are found or what condition they're found in? In other words, when we promulgate rules or propose rules or whatever, we're going based on, well, they're typically, found in these kind of locations, like gas pumps, for example. Okay. It seems to me like it would be good to know if it was at a rural location or a metropolitan location. It'd be good to know if it was at dispensers that were very old, or I would be very interested in knowing if you're finding skimmers in very new, upgraded EMV level dispensers, for example. Because when we're making rules about using tape and locks and all this other kind of stuff, I mean, it is kind of relevant to understand what equipment is being, kind of compromised. Is that information tracked, or is it possible that it could be?
Yes, we can definitely pull information regarding to if they are EMV compliant. We've definitely found skimmers already, inserts in these EMV equipment as well. They're out there. I would say right now, just probably, I'm guessing here, don't quote me on this, but the costs and things of building the inserts are probably a little more costly. So we are seeing every now and then a little comeback of, the old inline type skimmers that are that are attached to the ribbon on the inside. So we're seeing a little bit of everything, but we definitely know that they're moving again towards those inserts that are going to be, found in the DMV equipment.
This is Jessica Escobar. So, Mr. Maxey, the other thing we can do is at the next board meeting, we can also have Adam Colby, the director of our FCIC, give you all a brief report of just kind of the status of where we are and what's happening. Because also, I will say, one of the things that we're limited on is, we can certainly have a heat map of where we're finding things, but we want to be limited in what information we're sharing, because this is a public meeting. And so for security and safety purposes, we do want to kind of limit that. But he can give you a kind of a broad overview of what they're up to, but also what they're finding and generally what the trends are. So we can work to do that and put that on the next agenda.
This is Nathan Winkleman. I didn't want Mr. Maxey to be on an island that he was the only one thinking about all these same things. I as well. That would be good information.
This is Adam Thompson. Would pulsar skimming fall under this category as well? And would it be prevalent to identify that, or is this are we focusing strictly on financial?
So this is Jessica Escobar. So we are not authorized to address any pulsar skimming within the statute, so we don't track or address pulsars.
Yeah, this is Carlos Garza, and I believe earlier a website or a web address was going to be shared here for training. I think training is key to, helping us assist with these bad guys. We've experienced some skimmers as well, the inserts, and you know, we had some change in personnel, and I think we kind of fumbled the ball a little bit, but nonetheless, I think, you know, we can get some training and communicate that to the rest of our peers. I think that would be key in helping, you know, stem this crime. So I know that website is probably published somewhere, but if y'all be kind enough to share that with everybody, that'd be much appreciated. Thank you.
Sure, we could definitely do. You talking about the FMQ email inbox for questions or assistance, things of that nature?
Yes, or maybe I misunderstood, but I thought maybe about 5-10 minutes ago you mentioned something about an email address for some assistance with training on reporting.
Sure. Yes, sir.
That's what I was referencing.
Yes, sir. I could definitely put that in the chat.
Perfect. Appreciate it. Thank you,
No
Tim.
problem.
Okay. Thanks,
This
Tim.
this is Sergeant Bond. Just kind of speak about what I've seen personally down here with the skimmers. As the new technology got installed in our stations down here, it got to the point where the only stations that were getting hit were the ones that still had the old technology, and they were doing the inline skimmers with the serial ports. As we're moving forward, we're seeing less and less of these skimmers on the old pumps just because they don't exist. But we are seeing more overlay skimmers with the fake keypads. They're even hitting ATM machines. They're doing the overlays or they're doing the inserts, and they've got a camera setting up, catching PIN numbers and stuff like that. So as the technology changes, the criminals are going to change. So we just got to keep moving forward with them.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. Any more questions for Mr. Foskey? Okay, fantastic. Executive Office, Mary Winston.
Good morning, everyone. I'm not going to hold you long here. I think we just had a wonderful conversation, and the bills that we are tracking deal with just this very thing. But as Sergeant Bond just said, as technology changes and we catch one thing, it's always sort of a cat and mouse type of thing, right? And the laws are catching up with criminalizing some of this behavior. We only have several days, 13, until sine die, which means the end of the legislative session. There's another time period there that does allow for vetoes in certain things, and if a special session is called, doesn't look like that would have anything to do with your profession. It really, I'm not going to say this is almost here. This is almost here. At our next meeting, we should actually have what occurred and what has passed and implementation dates and where we'll be moving towards with staff for rules that incorporate the bills that became statute. So, and I'm getting pings from our different staff, our government relations. I said, how many days until sine die? And I got 13, and then I got 13 days and 13 hours. So you can tell how much they're working, and several of us were on last night watching different appropriations bills, because as our legislators work late, so do we, because we're watching what's happening with our programs. I do want to thank our staff for government relations, Mr. Steve Bruno. He leads that group. Jeff Kopus and Julie Davis, they have worked tirelessly with this as we go through this session. Jessica Escobar has provided testimony. FCIC is doing a fantastic job, and everyone agrees on that. And so we are, though, in sort of a cat and mouse thing. We're doing the right thing, and we're doing good work. I'm going to wrap it up there because we have actual meat to this meeting, and let you know that we will have a more in-depth report once sine die has occurred, and we have some deadlines on the progress we'll have to make from there. Thank you.
Thanks, Mary. Any questions for Mary from the board members? Okay, great. Thanks, Mayor. Appreciate that update. We look forward to hearing all about it at the next meeting, how things shook out. So it's always an exciting time every couple of years, right? Okay, item F on the agenda. We've spent several meetings now talking about the amendments to Chapter 97 rules. Worked pretty hard as a group and as subgroups to kind of hash out recommended language. So appreciate everyone's time and effort. What we have now, at the last meeting, we moved forward with posting to the Texas Register, and the TDLR did receive some public comments. So the draft that you've been sent is essentially the update in response to those public comments. So I'll let Jessica fill us in with more details.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. So presiding officer and members, thank you. It's been a long road, like he said, and we're here now. We've gone through the public comment process. So I'm going to kind of touch base on processes first, and then we'll go into the rules themselves. So we're here now. We've gone through public comment. We had 30 days of public comment. Additionally, people could have commented, before the meeting, but we went through the public comment process and people were able to submit comments. During that time period, we did receive 4 comments, and I'll go over those here in a minute. What you all received is a revised version of the rules. And so what that means is, based on those comments we received, we made some changes. So we're going to be able to discuss the rules this morning. We can discuss our proposed changes as an agency and what we think the changes can be in response to those changes. I will say we can discuss them. You're able to provide your feedback. We cannot go very far off of what we've presented. We can't add things. We can't really make broad changes in response. There's limited things you can do as part of the Administrative Procedures Act because there are parameters, right? Because we've already gone out for public comment. So to make broad changes things for the public. Remember, it's all about transparency. And so when people don't have an opportunity to comment, it changes things a lot. They have one expectation, and for us to do something else or narrow things, it makes it very different. So we're going to start there. We, like I said, can't make a whole lot of changes. We can certainly pull something back from this proposal. Mary was just talking about legislative session. We have a pending bill that is Senate Bill 246. It's moving along, and that is going to clean up Chapter 2310, which is your enabling statute for motor fuel. Should that pass, we're going to go straight back into rulemaking, because that's going to create some changes that will necessitate cleanup for definitions and a couple things here and there, right? So we're going to go straight back into rulemaking. We also have a pending cleanup for Chapter 2312, which is related to the FCIC. Doesn't really affect you all, but it is just letting you know there's things out there. We also have been talking repeatedly about the fact that this is a starting point. We need to get out there, and then we can come back and clean up, because we don't know until we get out there to see what works. So with that said, I'm going to start there. If you have questions, please speak up and let me know. I'm going to be sharing my screen, so I really won't be able to see hands. So let me know, or Mary, please let me know. Before we start, you should have received comments, but just to summarize for the public, we received those 4. 2 of those comments were from the same commenter, same individual, saying, or really asking whether fraud training could be provided by an employer, essentially. Would they be able to provide their own training? That's a question. We won't provide a response to that. That's just our practice in rules throughout the agency. We don't respond to questions in rulemaking. The other one was essentially a non-comment. It was a question, is part of the agency, we refer it over to another division to answer that question. We did receive one substantive comment from the Texas Food and Fuel Association, and they had multiple pieces to their comment. And apologize, because there's several, so I'm not going to have them memorized. But those are the ones that you're going to see more included into your package. These were not things that I unilaterally decided, or we didn't unilaterally decide as an agency, let's make these changes, but they are in response to this comment. And we discussed them as an agency. So as part of program, as part of GC, we talked about them. So their comments were related to responsibilities of merchant and operator. And there are things that we've discussed here. You all brought those up as well. How do you know who's responsible for what? The other one was provisions related to the unauthorized removal of skimmers that might be detrimental to retailers who are waiting for the removal of those skimmers. So the time period related there, we talked about the 72 hours. That was something we had been going back and forth on. The inspection logs, which they felt may be cumbersome. And then the last piece was related to the fraud awareness training and how that would impact a retailer. So with that said, I'm going to go into the actual proposal, the revised proposal itself. So for anybody following along, just so you know, double red strike through shows anything that we are not going to make a change to anymore, or that we are changing. So anything that's double underlined means it's new. So I'm going to start sharing my screen. If you have questions, please interrupt me and let me know. That was a lot of explanation before I could even start this, but there's a lot going on here. So I wanted to make sure you have information. So I'm not going to go item by item in complete detail because that's a lot. But I wanted to start here in the definitions because they are important and there's a trickle down effect to those. So initially we had revised the definition of merchant, which I think triggered that definition, that comment that we received, which was, what does that mean? Where are the responsibilities? So we did make a change here. We pulled back that revised definition for merchant. Here reason. One thing I think we wanted to provide a better and more clarified use of a term, but also knowing that we have a possible legislative change in Senate Bill 246, this is going to change. So we anticipate that the definition for dealer is going to change as a part of statute, and may or may not. If that bill doesn't pass, it won't change and it's moot. Regardless, we wanted to make sure that we were in line and clarified so that everybody understands what the responsibilities are. So once that changes, or rather doesn't change, changes numbering, and so we made those changes accordingly.
Jessica, Terry, Maxie, just real quick so that I can make sure I'm following. You mentioned the double underline and the not underline.
Right.
Can you just like scroll to the page one and just by example clarify this stays, this goes, just so I got my bearings on it?
So right here, initially, what you had seen was we added a single underline, which meant we were adding, pointing to something you can't see, we were adding the word include, right? And then we were omitting all of this language in parentheses, in brackets, and we were adding all of these underlines. So what I did in adding these double strike throughs is to show you we're not making that change anymore. We're getting rid of this change in its entirety. So we're not making that change. It's going away. So it's going to be left as is. Not going to make that change in the proposal anymore. And so here, these are all going to be left. We're not making changes anymore to these proposed sections. So that's how you would see that there. This one, section 14, that was one where we were going to make a change. We're not making a change. So the numbering, we'll go through and make sure it aligns. Registrant. That's where I wanted you all to know that we were making the change. So we talked about who's responsible for reporting, for taking action with anything, right? Finding a tape, finding a sticker that's missing, a consumer information sticker, any of those items. We've clarified that the registrant, who is the owner or authorized operator, who registers the device, is the one that's going to be responsible. So throughout the chapter where it said merchant, owner, operator, anywhere it said that, we've revised it to say registrant. And the reason for that is in our application, the person who registers with us is the one who will be sent or responsible for any violation. So regardless of whether you're the merchant, the owner, the operator, whoever you are, the dealer, it's that person who registers the device who will be responsible for our violation process. So what happens outside in your lease process, ownership process, we're not responsible for that. And so we're not going to be tracking down a lease and seeing who's involved in the ownership or lease process. So we're trying to clarify, if you're registering your device with us, you have those responsibilities to follow the rules. So that's what was added here for clarification purposes, and it tracks all through the rules. And so you're going to see it initially, and I apologize for scrolling quickly. You're going to see it here initially, right? So we started here by saying to register a device, a person. So a person, for purposes of like the Business and Commerce Code, statute has said a person is a business, an individual. A person can be many things. It's not just an individual. So that's why we use that broad term to say a person must submit when you're submitting that application for registration. And then we changed there, this needs to say a new registrant must submit. So we'll revise that. But anywhere you saw owner or operator, it's now going to, that one is correct. Anywhere you saw owner or operator, it will say registrant, because we're trying to clarify that's the responsibility of that person. So here you're seeing the double underline. That means that's the new language, is registrant. So just kind of for your information on the double underline.
And
So that was,
Jessica, on this
Yes, sir.
change from merchant to registrant, Terry Maxey again.
Mhm.
You might have said this and I missed it. The impetus for this change was for a legal reason or something, or was it a change in opinion or what?
No, so it was alignment, right? So it's always been owner operator. And when we started making so let's back up 2 sessions now. So when House Bill 2106 was implemented in the 86th session, two sessions ago, that was a session that the skimmer, program, for lack of a better term, and FCIC was set up. That was outside of our motor fuel statute. That was in Chapter 607 of the Business and Commerce Code. They set up that definition of merchant. And so it was a little bit messy because it didn't align with our definition in the motor fuel statute of owner operator. That's the only reason we brought in the word merchant, so they could align with anything we used in skimmer. For our purposes, they're exactly the same thing, but we wanted to be clear, okay, if you're the merchant, you have to comply with these requirements that are in Chapter 607. Nothing changed. Nothing changed on our part. They have been the exact same for the last 3 years. However, since we started the rulemaking, now that we have the board and we're going through this process, we were doing this as a cleanup. And that was the only function of that, was to clean up the rules and the verbiage to make it an easier process.
So, Mr. Maxey, I wanted to add to it. I know you have something else you would like to add. In a word, yes, it is for legal reasons. If we look at the word registrant, as Jess continues on down, we talk about registration renewal. So it's for simplicity within the actual rule. So instead of owner operator, merchant that was found somewhere else, we just refer to all of this as a registrant. And we know that that incorporates everyone who registers with this program under our statute and therefore this rule.
Right.
Okay, yeah, and that makes sense to me. And I don't know, Jason, if we're off to debate this or whatever. I will just make 2 very quick comments and then you can do whatever y'all want to do. But I would have a harder time supporting the changes of the pick 2 things and all that kind of stuff if we're making the responsibility strictly with the registrant. And the reason is, if you're 7-Eleven and you have a store leased to somebody in El Paso, the idea that they have absolute daily control over a log or a piece of tape being torn is not realistic. And if we add all of these rules and conditions that now a registrant has to meet because they actually own a piece of real estate or a convenience store or something like that, you kind of create sort of an impossible scenario where you're asking them to do something that's not even practical. So I just go on the record saying that I was comfortable with the idea of the merchant being broadly defined so that there is a little bit of buy-in or investment for someone who is actually there operating the store. That you've got location. I don't know if this is lost or maybe I might not be understanding it, but You have, 15,000 convenience stores in Texas, and a great many of those are not operated by the person that registers it. A great many of those have probably never been visited by the person that registers it. So the
Correct.
idea that they can do tape and all this other kind of stuff is it concerns me. So I just state that, and if it's more discussion, fine, or if not, I'll leave that up to Jason.
Sure, and we'll take that under advisement.
I would,
So
this
we
is
appreciate
Keisha
that.
Escada. What I've seen in other compliance programs is that, ultimately someone has to be the responsible party for a company. And they have to own the violation that comes with those regulations. But that doesn't mean that that person can't have some internal guidelines between them and their operators to say, I'm entrusting this to you and you need to make sure that this is handled properly. Because a lot of times, the agencies don't have resources to go to each individual person and track things down, sort of what Jessica was stating earlier.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, Keisha. I think the issue is also that we don't have it's not even a contractual relationship. We don't have a relationship with that merchant on site, right? They're not signing with us to register. We don't have the teeth to reach them to say, okay, you have this relationship with us to where we can file any type of violation or penalty against you. So they're not availing themselves to us by being employees or operators, or rather not operators, employees on the day-to-day. Yes, I understand lessees. With us, we don't have any of their operating information. That all lies with who's registering. So I understand the concern, and that's something we can look at as a cleanup item next session. But right now, within the parameters we have within the rules and statutes, those are not changes we can make at this time.
Yeah, fully understand and appreciate that. And the last thing I'll say is, first of all, I think the agency can enforce something on anybody that is operating a metering device. In my opinion, that's to me, it just makes common sense. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not trying to overstep myself here, but more broadly, the registrant stuff is all fine and dandy until you start making them take like daily actions and stuff. So these rules that we're putting in place are going to impose some actions and requirements for somebody that has to literally be on the property. And so once we expanded it to that, it's hard to not recognize this is a reality. This is what's real. And I suppose we're on this board to try to, just advise about the way the industry works. And so that is a little bit of a concern to me. And I won't belabor it anymore. That's my opinion.
I do want to add, just in different, I've worked regulation in Texas for a long time. It's the civil term for a lawyer, as a lawyer, is respondeat superior, and someone is acting on your behalf. And in other regulatory agencies I've worked in, I'll use real estate, for example. If someone is a broker, they have an agent that operates under them. And even in some of the programs that we have here at TDLR, the ultimate responsibility lies with that broker. And us being able to reach the registrant, as Mrs. Escada said, we're not trying to be punitive. We're not trying to do, but legally we have to reach who we actually have the authority to reach. And it's not that we're going to say, oh, they ran this awful, and there may be some discussions. There may be some, as Mrs. Escada said, some communications between those parties to make sure you got the right person running your stuff. But who we can reach legally is the registrant. But I totally appreciate your comments, Mr. Maxey.
Sorry, making notes.
Chairman Harris, this is Carlos Garza. My time has reached here that I need to depart. I have a conflict that I could not get out of, and apologies to you, apologies to the rest of the group, but I'm gonna need to sign off at this time. But I know I rest that everything's in good hands here, and I support the changes, so I'm okay with them. So guys, everybody have a great day. Thank you so much for everything.
Thanks, Carlos. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Carlos.
Chairman Harris. Bye, guys.
So if y'all are ready for me to, or do you have any other questions? If not, I'm going to go ahead and move on, but a little bit more quickly because these are all generally the same. They're all talking about registrant and merchant. So going to keep moving. These are all just clarifying because, of course, we want to go for consistency throughout the chapter. No changes are being made here to this section because some of them just didn't change. And so the rest are just going to be clarification, registrant, merchant. So 9729 is where we make changes for clarification purposes that we identified that need to be cleaned up because we have other changes in response to comments. So we went through 9729, and these are the obligations when a skimmer is found on site at a retailer and what has to be done. So we went through, and this was the submit in a manner prescribed by the department is just cleaning that one up and taken from a different location. What we did clarify is to say which access has to be blocked. And it does say the dispenser to prevent tampering with the evidence. The dispenser itself has to be blocked because it's vague to say what has to be blocked, what access has to be blocked. Part of it was, okay, is it just the card reader? Is it the entire dispenser? Is it one side? And in discussing with program and also with FDIC, the rationale is there can be, depending on the skimmer could affect both sides. So we want to make sure that there is a clear provision that says, okay, the whole dispenser should be protected until it can be removed. All of the language related to by law enforcement department, et cetera, removed just to say as authorized under this chapter, because you're going to see later in 9730, it's streamlined to allow you all more options to remove that skimmer in a timely manner. So these are just cleanup provisions to align with 9730. So let's go to 9730, and that's where the changes are made. So this is one of the comments we received regarding the timeline for removal. And I know this was a point of discussion that we had previously, the timeline for removal, but also the process for removal. How would you have that tracking piece? How would we have the mechanism, which is certainly something that we were trying to consider as well. How would we have something in our files? How would, part of it was for you all saying, well, how are you going to know we reported? The concern that, somebody might come in and say, well, we don't think you reported. So the way that we worked with program and their suggestion was, okay, let's remove law enforcement, because as a requirement in our rules already, the registrant is submitting notice to us online through our system, right? So they've already reported to us. So there is a time-stamped notification. You could print it out. We have it in our email. As soon as you notify us, we've got it. So if you notify us as soon as you find it, we're saying 48 hours. If you notify us, you can remove it. But of course, we still have be instructed to do so by law enforcement. So they're kind of going together. We still have the provision there saying this is how you should remove it. We want to have those careful provisions of if you're going to remove it, please be cautious in how you remove it, because to the extent that we can, or you have a law enforcement agency that's willing to take the skimmer, we want you to do so that it can be used if at all possible. So we've got that there. Of course, we've discussed it before. We don't want to put a lot of procedures and details into the rule. There are times when you may contact law enforcement, you may contact your service company, they're not able to come out, but you can contact us at FMQ Tech Info, contact us by email after you've contacted us on the form and say, hey, no one's here, what can we do? Or you can let us know law enforcement just doesn't want it. They are not interested, they are not able. And we have coordinated with FDIC and they've said, send it to us. So those are those one-off situations that we really don't want to put it into rule, because once you start putting all of the one-offs, the rules get really long. You forget something inadvertently, and then it's kind of narrow, and you look at it and say, well, they didn't put it in, so was there an intention not to include it? So there's going to be opportunities for us to look at the things on a case-by-case basis. So again, we're putting these in here broadly, and you have the opportunity to work with us. As an agency, that's always been our policy with you all as a program. We are here for compliance and outreach, and we're here and available to you. So we did clarify in response to this, reduced it to 48 hours, and clarified that it can be removed all the language to say it can just be removed in accordance with this section. So it just means you're going to follow these procedures. Does anybody have questions in response to 9730? All right, great. So 9731, just clarification for registrant, remove this language related to log. You'll see why next. We're going to discuss that one. We removed this language related to open to the public. This is one of those things that we discussed internally with our regulatory division. The forecourt video cameras should always be available, right? You just never know, and I can't imagine that you just wouldn't have an area that would be cordoned off and somebody couldn't get in there. So we just removed that section. 9732, entirely read, entirely strike through. So this is one we discussed previously. We received a comment on the rationale. So we got the comment. We had extensive discussions internally on this one. So part of it was how effective will this rule be? What will everybody get from this rule? How does it help everybody? So we know everybody has different processes, different procedures. We have staffing level issues. What will this rule accomplish? And so initially, the way 9732 was proposed was that daily, a log had to be completed by an employee there within the retailer that had to go out and inspect all the devices to see if there was anything questionable going on. And then they had to sign off saying, okay, there was nothing questionable, initial it, time it, go on, had to keep that for a year. You also had to maintain a maintenance log. So anybody that comes out, touches the devices, whether it's your service tech, your employee who is changing the paper, anyone, they have to sign off and document that they were touching the log. Again, 1 year retention on these documents. So the discussion was, this is quite labor intensive. Again, going back to discussions internally, but also with FCIC, we looked at the metrics. You guys brought that up earlier during discussions and reports. What are we seeing? What we are seeing is it's not the retailers, it's not our service technicians that are putting in skimmers. So how productive will this be? So we know the maintenance logs are not going to be productive. The inspection logs, we know you already have employees that are out there checking your devices. So this is going to be incumbent, best practices on you all to track them. But also, we don't want to create another layer of bureaucracy for us to be going out, spending our time looking at your logs. We don't want you all to be using your time documenting something when it can be better suited just going out there and checking and doing all of these things. So the rule in its entirety was removed from the proposal. So should you all approve the proposal, this would be removed before it goes forward to the commission for adoption. So that is the extent of those changes. 9733 is one more that we got a comment on from Food and Fuel. The question was related to the employee personnel file. Seemed cumbersome. So we removed that section and just said, okay, if you've got a training, it's got to be completed. If we want to see it, let us know. One of the questions that we had was, well, we don't know what it's going to look like. Well, to be fair, we haven't completed it either. However, we do want to say it's not going to be something that is going to be a burden for employers. Number one, it's going to be online. We anticipate that it will be less than an hour or about an hour. So it won't be something that's going to be, very labor intensive. In addition to like your TABC, TCEQ training that they're already watching online, this is going to be something that helps you. And, maybe you need a refresher for your staff. So this is going to be an easy thing. We can get you out there and watching these go on your way. And that's what this training is. To the question that we received regarding training provided by other companies, other service companies, we don't plan to add that to the rule. And the rationale for that is we don't want to get in the business of reviewing and approving trainings. And so because of the nature of what we are planning to provide in that brief 1-hour video training you can access online, we don't feel it's necessary to provide that on top of what our regulatory program is being able to offer. So we will not be adding that to this proposal. That's it. That is the proposal. Those are the changes, and that's what we've got in response to those comments. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. If I need to pull it back up, I'm happy to do so, but please let me know if you all have any questions or comments on the changes.
Hey, Jessica, this is Terry Hara. I just wanted to applaud you and your group for, after our last board meeting, all the things we threw at you and how well y'all have adapted and I think made this a win for everyone. So that's just a simple comment.
We appreciate that. And Chris and Tim have worked very closely with me, and I appreciate their work as we've gone back to the drawing board multiple times to try and bring things to you guys. And I will say as a caveat real quick, after this, the next step will be that you will be visiting the criminal penalty, the penalty matrix work group. We'll be getting back together with our enforcement division, because now we need to go through and make sure that everything lines up. So any changes that we've made, you guys are going to be getting back together and working on those later this summer.
This is step one, everybody. More work
Lots
to
of
be
steps.
done, but fantastic work, but step one.
Thanks, Mary. It feels like step 1D or E or F by this point, but appreciate it. Any additional comments, questions about the rule package?
It needs to be 1AA or BB, you know.
Anything else for staff on this? Okay, if not, I would ask for a motion to recommend the Commission of Licensing and Regulation approve the draft as written.
I make the motion to approve as written. It's Terry Hara.
Wes Nance, I second.
Thank you, gentlemen. Delia, will you perform a roll call vote, please?
Yes, sir. Keisha Esqueda. Approve. Terry Maxey. Nathan Winkleman.
Approve.
Terry Hara.
Approve.
Zeth Stevens.
I approve.
Adam Thompson.
Approve.
Wes Nance.
Approved.
And presiding officer Jason Harris.
Approved.
Motion passes.
Thank you, everyone. Moving on the agenda, any recommendations for items the board would like to see discussed at the next meeting?
So, Mary
Jason, Terry
Winston.
Maxey, when is the
Mr.
next
Maxey.
scheduled? I'm sorry, sorry about that, Mary. I was just gonna
Oh,
ask,
no
when
worries.
is it scheduled, and is it refining this stuff, or what's the next thing?
So I'm gonna try to bring it in. We don't have it scheduled yet. That's, I think, next on the agenda, the next agenda item. I was gonna add that based on your questions and comments, we're gonna modify some of those things that Mr. Foskey gave us, some trends. And Jessica has mentioned that Adam Colby, she could speak with him to come and give a presentation on FCIC, which Sergeant Bond has kind of given us a little snapshot of what he's seeing. So those are a couple of things we're adding or changing for the next meeting as far as reports, getting that additional information. Mr. Colby, or is he a sergeant or an officer? I'm not sure, to come and also provide information. And what else would you all like to see?
I think my takeaway, Mary, from that discussion earlier was that Tim would kind of focus on the numbers and that the FCIC would kind of focus on the what and what they're seeing with respect to the details on what type of skimmers they're finding and where, and kind of the heat mapping. But hopefully everyone had the same takeaway that I did.
Okay. Mr. Maxey, was there anything else you were interested
Yeah,
in?
Mary, thank you. Yeah, I would just say that we did go through this stuff kind of fast. There's a lot to cover, and I certainly appreciate a brief meeting. You know, when we cover some of the enforcement stuff, if there's any particular case study that's relevant, you know, I've expressed, I have a dealer-oriented business. I've expressed all these concerns, and you know, so I mean, anything that is kind of plays right into the rules. Do we get somebody an enforcement action or something on these rules that maybe are particularly hard to follow, which could create an opportunity to revise? I mean, so things like that on the enforcement side as a result of the rules would be helpful.
Okay, that's great. Kind of like a highlight. And in some of our programs, we have those highlights are anomalies, or we end up having trends as to what violation is occurring more often. So Tony Reed and enforcement will know how to get that for you. Also, I know you mentioned customer servicing and licensing statistics. You wanted that cleaned up, even though, you know, I did get information from Jessica that calls were more at your previous regulatory agency. We do want to know the trends that are going on now. And so licensing is going to get some more information and kind of fill in that report for you. So we can do all of that. That's just staff things that, you know, we're here all day, so we can get for you. If there were any other issues, we've made a great step today. So this is now going to move forward to the commission for a vote. So that is wonderful. And we will be starting with criminal conviction guidelines and things like that, so that enforcement work group will move forward. And always I try to end the meetings with saying, if you don't have anything now, make sure you just email advisory.boards@tdlr.texas.gov and say agenda item requests, and we'll take a look at that then. So sometimes after a meeting, you know, you feel like on the spot a little bit and your brain is maybe a little fried. I think this was not a brain frying meeting, but just in case you think of something later, you can come back as presiding officer, can let you know what you need to do, or if he has something, he can also just reach out to us.
Thanks, Mary. It sounds like the only driver really for the next meeting is the penalty calculation review and feedback. So you'll have to kind of share with us what you think the time frame is, and we can kind of decide on a meeting time frame based on that.
Okay, Delia.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear him.
What are we looking at for a meeting time frame?
I don't have that information. I
So
can pull the board once I check with you guys.
Yes. So we've done this 1A or 1Q or whatever we want to call it that we did today was a big lift, and we got there. So we were meeting very, you know, either with this type of meeting or work group meeting. So we've gotten to this place, and next steps again is the commission, who then votes on this and makes it actually under your advice and makes it a rule. So I do not want to schedule anything yet. We're not going to look at June, because even though I don't think anything relevant to veto from the session has anything to do with this program, so I think we're pretty good, but we do want certain time frames to pass from the legislative session. So I am thinking possibly late summer, but and that depends on Jessica because I'm not seeing her nod, but
I think even later, quite honestly, Mary, because we have work group work to do first.
Okay.
So I'm thinking we need our penalty matrix revised first, and then we're going to have, should the bill pass, rules to work on. So it's going to be a minute before we need to regroup. I would say closer to the fall.
Okay, so that kind of gives everybody an idea. Now, before we schedule that, we like to let you know a couple of months ahead of time, a month ahead of time, you know, when we can, that we're looking at this time frame. Dell typically provides 3 dates, and we go from there. But in the meantime, you will be summoned for work group meetings. So we can leave, this is agenda item H. We can leave that open for this time frame, letting everyone know that we will poll the board and notify them of the time for the next meeting, or ask for their input on 3 different times to see which is the most popular.
Sounds good, Mary. That's a process that worked well for us in the past, so I appreciate
Yes.
it. Okay. That's it for the agenda items. I appreciate everyone's time and attention. It was a pleasure seeing all your friendly faces. Until the next meeting, we'll adjourn now. Appreciate it.
Thank you all.
Meeting is adjourned at 11:12 a.m. Thanks, everyone.